Hi there, my name's Oscar.
My name's Vadims.
And today we're here to talk about a cool new feature, which is called Campaign Drafts and Experiments. I hope this session will be useful. I'll take you through the slides, and afterwards we'll have a small Q&A session with Vadims asking us the important questions. And hopefully you guys will start using this feature that's available now. So I'll just switch over to the slides. Here we go. So essentially, Campaign Drafts and Experiments is a and B testing feature implemented within AdWords. So it will let you test out multiple campaign level changes that you want to try out. It can be new keywords, it can be new remarketing lists, it can be new bidding strategies, it can be whatever you want. And you can test out how important these changes are and how they affect the results of your campaign. So the way you start off is, if we go into the system, we choose a campaign from the left-hand side. We all know this AdWords interface. Then there's a new drafts button next to the time period. If you click on the drafts button, it's going to ask you to either create a new draft or click on any existing drafts you've previously created for this campaign. So essentially, when you're starting out, you already have the create new option here. So let's see what happens if we click on the create new option. It's going to bring us this menu. You're going to give it a name. So keep in mind here that they can't share a name with an existing campaign or draft. So you have to put a new name here. So for example, let's try, if we put a name, let's say new bidding strategy. After you've named it, it takes you an interface that looks like this. So here, for example, the name of the draft is bid increases. And what they're essentially trying to test out is bid increases on certain keywords. There's no limit to the amount of changes you can make in this draft. And none of these changes will go live before we click the apply button here. So you can play around with anything you want in the campaign, and none of it will go live before we actually click on the apply button in the top right corner. So after you've made the changes you want, like we said, these can be anything: keyword level changes, campaign level changes, bid strategies, new remarketing lists, new keywords. After you're happy with the changes you've made, we click on apply. And then the next certain important step comes up. So you have two choices. You can update your original campaign. So basically you applied changes to the existing one, or you can run an experiment. And I'll take you through the difference between the two. So if you choose the update the original campaign, you'll be taken to the table, which will show the status of the draft. So currently we see the status is applying. So it's actually making the changes within the campaign. But if we create the experiment, which is the, let's say, recommended method for this feature, it's going to actually bring up a tab that looks like this. So you give your experiment a name. Essentially, this can be, let's say, similar to what we named the draft. We choose a start date. We choose an end date for this if we want to. So, for example, we usually recommend running these experiments for at least a month, if not longer, to actually gain statistical significant results. And we also choose the traffic share that we would like to use. So here we go 50-50. So 50% of the traffic that comes to this campaign goes to the original campaign, and then 50% of the traffic would actually divert to the experiment campaign.
So is that actually the best practice, actually, to have 50-50, or would you suggest maybe doing 20 and 80%, or...
That is a good question that often comes up. There's no, let's say, correct answer here. What we usually recommend here is going by the volumes of your campaign and how, let's say, how much you're willing to actually test out the new campaign. So if you have significant volumes for the campaign, you can start off with lower experimental volumes, even 20%. But it really depends on the volumes we're looking for.
But I guess for niche clients, you would really advise probably to doing 50-50 because of course the traffic volumes are quite low.
Yes, exactly. So obviously you can always change the split later on. If you're actually seeing that the experimental campaign is not getting enough traffic, you can change the split later on. But really go with how much traffic you're getting, how much the search volumes are, and also your willingness to, let's say, to test out the new changes that in the campaign. So after we've created the experiment, there's an all experiments tab, which you can see. So for example, there is actually creating this new experiment, bid increases test. And once the experiment is created, you will see it under a tab on all experiments, which will appear on the left-hand side under all campaigns and all drafts. There's an all experiments tab. You can see that at the top, there's a bar that explains the status of the experiment, whether it's active currently or not, and also the dates that you've running for. And after it's run for a while, or after it has stopped running, this is where the most important part comes in. The performance comparison tab appears. So this table actually shows you the traffic share between the experiment and the original campaign, as well as the results. So for example, here we can see that the experiment campaign, where it got a lot of less traffic, obviously, because the clicks and impressions were a bit lower. But the click-through rate is nearly 5 to 6 times as high. And the most important things, actually, when looking at this table, are next to the numbers. So we see some arrows there. We see a diamond, empty diamond there. We see some arrows pointing downwards and upwards, and we're going to show you what they exactly mean. So they indicate statistical significance, actually. So if there's no icon, it means that there wasn't enough data to make a decision whether this, let's say, this change actually has statistical significance. If it has a diamond, there's no or weakness significance, and the arrows actually then show significance. So the more arrows, the more significant the change was. And this is where, let's say, statistical and data-driven decision-making is made very easy for you, because you don't have to analyze things yourself. You just look at the arrows, and the system actually tells you whether the changes you made were good for the campaign or not. And after, let's say, if you're happy with the experiment results, you can click on Apply once more. And you can update your original campaign, or you can convert this experiment into a new campaign, which will have the same data budget as your original campaign, and the original campaign will be paused. So
what's the difference in here then? You, of course, you can do one or the other. So I guess here maybe if you maybe can deep dive maybe a bit more onto, let's say, the learning. So let's say if we applied enhanced CPC to our automatic bidding, what would happen?
That is a good question. So actually, when we choose update your original campaign, what happens is that the learnings will not carry over, and the system will have to go through the learnings of the enhanced CPC and the conversion optimizing once more. However, if we choose to convert to a new campaign option, then the learnings, especially those related to conversions, will stay in effect, and it will still carry on.
So your recommendation then, most of the times, probably is to convert to a new campaign?
Yes, exactly.
As long as you've, of course, seen the positive results out of that.
And as long as the changes we made are actually then, let's say, changes related to conversions. If it's keyword level or just bid modifications, then updating the original campaign is fine as well. Converting to a new campaign usually is when it's related to conversions. Some best practices to do and things not to do. So, for example, before each experiment, really decide which variable you want to test out, what kind of metrics you want to track to actually determine the success of the experiment. Label and name the drafts and experiments in a way that will help you actually remember which variables were changed. Don't name it just a campaign. Actually name the draft and experiment related to what you were changing.
So be more systematic, I guess, in this.
Yes, exactly. And be wary of changing the original campaign while the experiment is running. Don't change the original campaign just yet if you really want to actually see the difference between the test and the original one. As well as give it time to run, because the most important here is to actually gain enough data to make a statistically significant decision. So don't let it run for a week. Let it run for a month or more. Make sure it gets enough search volumes to actually make a good decision. And do not, kind of best practice would be, don't run an experiment with changes to multiple variables from the original campaign, because this will make it difficult to determine the impact of any individual change. So if you're actually comparing bidding strategy, just stick to the bidding strategy. If you want to test out bid increases, then stick to that. Don't make, let's say, different decisions in the same kind of different changes in the same experiments, because it'll make it harder to determine what was the cause behind the change after. And that's it for the implementation part.
Great presentation. I guess we have some questions as well for you. And then usually would come probably, but we have usually is a lot of questions from the agencies. Mm-hmm. So the first question to you, actually, after you've done all the experimentation that you see maybe positive results or maybe negative results, would you keep on experimenting those all in the future?
Definitely. So obviously, if there are positive changes and statistically significant, you probably want to apply them either in the same campaign or create a new campaign for that. Afterwards, of course, there are probably things you want to keep on testing. Depends on the volume. Let's say if you've made significant changes already, you might not want to keep on testing with the same volumes. Maybe you can decrease the volume then. Let's say 20% goes to the experiment campaign. But I think the important thing here is to always keep innovating and always kind of trying to find ways to optimize. So definitely some experiments should always be running in all campaigns.
Awesome. And we had some sort of experiments also in the past. So what would be the main difference between the old experiments and the new experiments that we have right now?
So the main differences actually would be that this new feature gives you unlimited amount of changes. So previously there was a hard cap on the amount of changes you can make. Now you can really test out campaign level settings even, which wasn't previously even possible to do. And this time, actually, the experiments are unique campaigns, like we said. So if you want to, let's say, do the conversion optimizer and enhance CPC, then later on you have the option to carry on those learnings, because it actually creates the new campaign, which is a very important feature.
Okay, and I guess the next question is, so what would be your number one change that you would experiment on in the campaign? So what would you say is really the key thing every advertiser should be experimenting on?
I think for most larger advertisers, let's say if you have a certain amount of volume and certain amount of conversions, I would say that going for these conversion-focused bidding strategies and different bidding strategies would be the key here. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to try out either enhanced CPC or conversion optimizer, but this really gives you an excellent way of doing so. So I'd say conversion, let's say focused kind of changes would be the main thing here.
Cool. And probably the last question for you. So we talked a bit about bids and strategies and like different things that you might want to change. But there's another component that's also very important for our advertisers, and that's quality score. So would you see massive quality score changes? So let's say in our main campaign we might have 6, 7, 8, and suddenly in the experiment campaign we might have a 3.
Good question.
Would it be similar or?
There shouldn't be a difference. So unless there's a significant change in the creative, so let's say the ads themselves or the landing page, then the quality score should be the same in both the original campaign and the experiment campaign. So no differences should be there.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.